Hi, everyone. A very good morning and a warm welcome to all of you who are joining us for this second session of our four-part webinar series on road safety in transit-oriented developments. This webinar is part of the ongoing work on integration of road safety considerations in transit-oriented development projects for the World Bank and has been prepared with funding from UK aid through the Global Road Safety Facility. Some house rules before we begin. This is a webinar, so all the participants are automatically muted. You may type in your questions and any concerns that you may have in the chat box, and we'll try our best to address that. For our presenters, I would request you all to be on mute when you're not presenting. While some of us have our cameras on, we understand if you don't want to switch your video. I would now invite Shigeyuki Sakaki, who is chairing this session.
Thanks, Abhishek. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks for joining this session 2 of the 4-session series workshop on road safety and TOD. My name is Shige Sakaki. I'm a senior transport specialist with the World Bank. I'm based in Hanoi, Vietnam, working as a sector coordinator of our portfolio in Vietnam. I also serve as a co-lead of the Transit-Oriented Development Community of Practice, TODCOP, which is for the World Bank staff working on transit-oriented development. So today, our topic is road safety and TOD. As we all agree that TOD is very important, especially for developing countries, where the cities are booming, they need transit, they need road, they need development. TOD is an area that the World Bank, along with the development partners, have been actively working by developing toolkits, providing guidance, providing technical assistance to our client countries. TOD would provide great opportunity to improve road safety, as the aim is to basically reduce the car traffic and promote non-motorized transport around the transit stations. But at the same time, essentially TOD aims to have more non-motorized transport on street. That poses a challenge for practitioners, so that practitioners have to make sure that streets are safe, road safety is ensured. So in today's session, we will look at how to make road sesafety in TOD happen. As I said, this is session 2 of a 4-session series workshop. In the last session, session 1, which was held last week, that covered basically the scoping and introduction, TOD and road safety. Today, session 2 will be focusing on 2 things: assessment and enabling environment. We have session 3, which is to happen in a week, next Thursday, which is about planning and designing those safety measures in TOD. And we'll conclude with session 4, which is another week ahead, October 22nd, to focus on financing and implementation. We have great presentations from WRI colleagues and my colleagues from the World Bank. Abhishek, Binoy, Prerna will present on the good practice note that is being prepared. I understand that draft has been shared. The link for the draft has been shared. And my colleague Alina and Fan will present 2 case studies from our projects in our client countries. So regarding the program of today's session, right after my quick introduction, I will ask our WRI colleagues to make 3 presentations in total of 35 minutes. That is to be followed by 2 case studies, 30 minutes. And we have 10 minutes questions and answers. As the time for question and answer is a bit limited, we'll ask participants to send in your questions via this Q&A function, which you can see at the bottom of the screen, so that speakers can find the questions and respond whenever they have time. Last but not least, I'd like to thank the UK government for providing general support to enable our work, joint work, WRI and World Bank to prepare this practice, a good practice note, and organize this seminar. Without further ado, let me ask Abhishek to begin his presentation. Abhishek, please, floor is yours. Thanks.
Thank you, Shige. As mentioned earlier, this workshop series is part of the project on integration of road safety considerations in TOD projects. The larger scope of the project was to develop how-to guidelines to address the need of systematic inclusion of road safety considerations in transit-oriented developments, commonly known as TODs. Urbanization is happening worldwide, especially in low and middle income countries, and there is densification of neighborhoods around transit hubs. These areas see a very high number of pedestrians and cyclists. With this large number of users on the roads, interactions with different modes increases chances for road crashes, and it becomes essential to include road safety considerations while planning and developing such urban environments. A TOD planning approach that focuses on creating urban development patterns, concentrating around transit stations, which facilitate the use of public transit, walking, and cycling as primary modes of transport that supports vibrant, diverse, livable communities. It provides a culture of live, work, play, shop, and learn in a pedestrian-friendly environment for its residents. These developments are characterized by a high number of pedestrians and cyclist movement patterns from stations to the surrounding developments and built areas, and developing a TOD without thinking about road safety is not desirable. There is a very strong correlation between road safety and TOD, and a well-executed TOD scheme has the potential to make a far-reaching impact on the road safety scenario in the city. A TOD advocates for the compact mixed-use development that encourages people to switch from using private vehicles to choose public transport or active modes of transportation for their daily travel patterns, including for work, schools, accessing daily needs. Mixed-use developments with active frontage and accessible services centered within safe walking and cycling distances around transit stations encourages users to choose transit combined with non-motorized commute over the use of cars. This pattern of considerable mode shift minimizes the number of cars on the roads, thereby reducing the chances of conflicts and increasing safety. We can apply TOD at 4 scales, that is regional or city level, corridor level, station area level, and site level. The World Bank has developed a TOD toolkit consisting of implementation resources and tools that includes information on how to take on a TOD project from its initiation to completion. These includes tools for analyzing the existing conditions, communication strategies, how-to guides, and provide step-by-step guidance on evaluating different information, resources in the form of guidelines, best practices, and lastly, procurement resources to be able to include the requisite services and professionals for the tasks at hand. WRI has helped in integrating these road safety needs to these existing resources through updates and additions. This toolkit is based on the TOD framework consisting of 5 steps of assess, enable, plan and design, finance and implement. And it must be noted that these 5 are not as a linear process, but rather as a simultaneous, parallel, interlinked process. And in our session today, we will speak about assess and enable. Resulting from all these integrations in the toolkit, we've also developed a new product, which is the Good Practice Note, which compiles all the information regarding the integration of road safety considerations in TOD projects that has been developed through the toolkit. With this background on the relationship between road safety and TOD, we would now look at the first step of the TOD framework, which is assess. This initial stage helps in determining how ready a city is for TOD, based on analysis of complementary set of economic, geographic, demographic, urban forms, and institutional factors. At a city level, A high road fatality rate can be used to advocate for a TOD plan and the urgency for its implementation. At a corridor level, the mapping of road safety data will help identify the vulnerable road users and indicate the most critical zones that can be improved through the implementation of TOD. Given the critical importance of road safety to the city's demography and economy, the vital role that TOD can play to improve the same is essential to be considered, and hence it is essential to consider a road safety lens in assessing the TOD readiness or viability of a city. Along with advocating for TOD projects to address road safety challenges around a transit station and city at large, a road safety assessment also helps in identifying gaps at the institutional level, critical areas in the network and that require attention, which can thus be prioritized, and mitigation strategies can be provided through the design stages. A TOD readiness can thus be carried out in 3 steps. Road safety inclusion for TOD readiness can be carried out in 3 steps. And the first being road safety capacity reviews, then data collection and analysis, and finally the road safety tools. The first step looks at assessing efficiency and effectiveness of the various existing policies and regulatory frameworks and institutional setups for TOD implementation available at the local, regional, and national levels. These are analyzed and rated based on their capacities to execute planning, design, and implementation of road safety measures and how they can be suitable in supporting a future TOD project based on the type of transit services, scale of TOD, and the urban context. This assessment will help identify shortcomings in readiness for TOD implementation and may be further addressed through the remaining stages of the TOD framework. It is often observed that road safety and TOD policies are independent of each other. However, as we learned that road safety is an intrinsic component of TOD implementation, it therefore needs to be part of TOD policies and regulations as well. For example, any existing road safety mandate of the government, such as say the Vision Zero, which aims at zero road crash, could be included as part of TOD vision as well. Simultaneously, institutional capacities are also assessed to determine the right mix of professionals within the implementing agency. A typical team involves planners, transportation planners, urban designers, and real estate experts who have significant experience in urban development as well as transportation. However, in order to make informed decisions to reduce road crashes and make safe spaces for all road users, it is essential to include road safety experts who are well aware of safe system practices. Additionally, it's always good to have urban planners and designers who have prior experience in designing complete streets. Evidence-based advocacy helps in decision-making and prioritization of funding and project implementation. Data collection and proper analysis of the same helps in gaining support from the community and various stakeholders and provides the basis for making relevant improvements. For the road safety assessment, 2 types of data are required to be collected. The first is the information about the physical context. This includes a typical road inventory that can provide information on the conditions that could have led to the crash. What was the function of the road? Whether it was an arterial or a connector? What was the right of way available? And the number of lanes and their widths. Presence of cycling infrastructure, is it protected, wide enough? Types of intersections, is it signalized? Does it have adequate crossing times? This is important, especially for an intersection which is close to a transit station. There would be a high number of pedestrians coming in and out of the station and would require longer crossing times, including wide sidewalks. Additional supporting information may also include understanding of the urban density surrounding land use as well as socioeconomic demographic data. Low-income neighborhoods would typically have low number of car users, and understanding the land use also helps in identifying high footfall places that may contribute to road crashes or may require significant improvements. Secondly, road crash data. This includes specific details to crashes, and analysis of crash data can help identify relevant patterns and assist in developing policies and institutional frameworks to reduce these crashes. The data collected needs to be analyzed comprehensively to identify crash trends and priority areas. This can be done through different methods. being basic trend analysis, crash factor analysis, black spot identification, and crash conflict analysis. I would now ask my colleague Binoy Mascarenas to elaborate on road crash assessments and their significance to a TOD readiness assessment.
Thank you, Abhishek, and a very good day to all of you. I'm happy to be here to be a part of this presentation. So I'm taking over from Abhishek to now actually go into some of the details on how we can collect data about road crashes that can help us inform our TOD strategy. So the first level is obviously the data that we want to collect for TOD, and this is the basic road crash data that most cities will have, and they're typically got from your police records. That is the date and time of the crash, the characters of the people involved, their age, gender, etc. Characteristics of the vehicle, crash severity, crash type, whether it was a major, minor, crash, and if possible, the geocoded crash location as exact as possible, because that can really inform the science of determining black spots, which are locations of high crash risk. Next slide, please. So the three basic sources for road crash data is one, obviously police records. They tend to be holistic, where you get a lot of the information that I had on the previous slide. But sometimes police records will not be adequate. And that's where you can supplement that with hospital records and vehicle insurance records. Hospital records are useful for getting information about crash victims that died a few days after the incident took place. Because that sometimes gets excluded from the police record, because the police records tend to be up to date only up to a particular point of time. And if the victim were to succumb to his or her injuries after that time period, then the police records may lose out on that. Another very good use of hospital records is actually going into details about the crash, which are sometimes left out from the police records. So you can get information about injuries on the victim's body, which can give you more details of how that crash occurred and what were the factors that led to that crash, which actually can inform decision making. Vehicle insurance records is another great source for crash data, and this is especially important for crashes that did not result in a fatality or serious injury, which is often the bulk of the data, right? So when you're generating a large volume of data, you even want crash records that involve only property damage, property being the vehicles involved. So very often, data may not get reported to the police for various reasons, but you will find that data in vehicle insurance records because people will report it in order to make their claim. So that's a great way to supplement the police records. And in the end, all of these data sets actually help in corroborating each other. It helps you validate each data set and make a final estimate of what is the crash risk for that location. Next slide, please. So to start with, when you get that crash data, you obviously want to do a basic trend analysis. That is to identify your high-risk road user groups, which are typically pedestrians and non-motorized transport users. But then you also want to get into details that of broadly where these crashes happen, what time of day, are they happening in the peak where there are a higher number of pedestrians, or are they happening at off-peak where there's a higher potential for over speeding and reckless driving. So these are the kind of things that you want to get out of the data, because that will actually help you inform your decision making. Yeah, next slide. So one thing that we encourage when people are doing the assessment of crash risk is to not look at crash risk being attributed to one factor. That's typically the mistake made when we look at police records. As we see, an overwhelming number of crashes are reported as being due to driver error, either reckless driving or over speeding. But what we know is that road crashes are a multi-factor event, and there are many variables that come into play together that lead towards a crash. So a scientific assessment of crashes can actually look at disaggregating these factors into three broad buckets, that is human factors, vehicle factors, and road factors, and seeing how the juxtaposition of these three factors together led to the crash. Now, why is that important? Because as a decision maker, you are in the position of influencing one or more of these factors, but you may not have influence over all three factors. But when you're looking at these crashes that are disaggregated by their causes, you can see what are the interventions that you can make that will have the maximum impact, because you know that you cannot control for everything, but if you can control for the things that are within your control, then you can have a significant impact on reducing crash risk. And that is actually what the whole rationale behind the science of crash factor analysis is. Next slide, please. As I said, another important aspect of doing crash analysis is identifying black spots. Now, black spots are locations which have a high crash risk. And obviously, if a location has a high crash risk, then there is something about the environment or the street infrastructure at that location that is contributing to that high crash risk. Now, why is that relevant for transit-oriented design? Because very often these black spot locations could be located in the vicinity of your TOD zones, and that means on the corridors and on the routes that take commuters to and from the stations. So in order to make an effective TOD plan, road safety becomes part and parcel of it. And very often the design interventions for TOD strategy can have a positive co-benefit on road safety because you're improving access to the transit stations that's typically pedestrian and non-motorized commuter access. You automatically make it safer for all other street users. So that's why these two go hand in hand, and the identification of black spots becomes extremely crucial. Next slide, please. Now, how do we go about it? So once you identify a black spot, how do you go about understanding what interventions that one can do? So that leads us to one particular tool that is called the crash conflict analysis. What a crash conflict analysis is basically is doing a manual count of all incidents that could potentially lead to a crash during a given period of time. Because you have to keep in mind that even for a black spot typically gets defined when you have about 3 to 5 road crashes that have happened in or around that location, and then you get it defined as a black spot. But even 3 to 5 data points is not enough to understand the trends of what leads to that crash risk. So you need more data points in order to make effective decisions. And in order to get those more data points, what we count is not just crashes, but incidents that could have potentially led to a crash. And these near misses could be either two vehicles or two road users that crossed each other's path in a near fraction of time, or it could be one road user making an evasive maneuver in order to prevent a crash, either abrupt braking or suddenly swerving lanes, or if it's a pedestrian suddenly darting across the crossing. So these are the kind of things that one looks out for in order to count that as a near miss. And today, this science of crash conflict analysis is largely aided through video recording, where you have cameras that are focused on either an intersection or a stretch of corridor that records data and automatically through AI technologies codifies that data, identifies the vehicles involved, and actually, and I'll show you in a subsequent slide, actually captures video and is able to codify that into doing a crash conflict analysis. Next slide, please. All right, so now this is a study that WRI did in partnership with an organization called BRIS Synergies, where we were doing a crash conflict analysis of one intersection in Mumbai in India. So what the technology allows you to do is, for one, it immediately codifies vehicles as per their type, whether they're cars, buses, etc., and also road users like pedestrians, cyclists, etc. And you can see the trailing red lines. That is the path that these vehicles take. Now, every time the path of one or more road users crosses each other in a small fraction of time, whether it's half a second or a second, that gets recorded as a potential for a near miss and a potential of a crash. Further analysis is done in order to code that crash risk to ascertain its severity based on past precedent and past data points that are entered, and that helps us in calculating the crash risk for that particular intersection. Next slide, please. Now, why is this useful? For one is that crash conflict analysis allows us to take action before an accident happens. We're not waiting for something disastrous to happen before we take precautionary measures, and that's one big advantage. The second thing is that it helps us identify the exact spot of high risk, right? So we can actually pinpoint down to the square meter where are the locations where most of these near conflicts are happening. And then we can actually come out with the engineering interventions, whether it is an extension of a median or the installation of a protective island, etc. We can come down to that, or elimination of a blind spot. These are the kind of interventions that we can arrive at once we do this kind of a deep analysis. It's quick and easy to scale up because now we have video cameras at almost on every major intersection that is signalized. So it's very easy to get this data and to codify the data. It literally takes a few minutes to run the data through the system once it's, and the thing is, it gets better the more you use it, right? With almost any AI, it gets better recognizing vehicles, it gets better recognizing different kinds of conflicts. And that is the advantage of doing that. And yeah, of course, the fourth advantage is it's very easy to compare before and after analysis. When you run the same assessment once you do the intervention to see if there are any benefits. Next slide, please. All right, so some of the other tools that we have for doing road safety interventions is one is road safety impact assessments, road safety audits, road safety inspections, and the IRAP tool. So I'll cover three of these tools in this slide, starting with the road safety audits. Next slide, please. So what is a road safety audit? A road safety audit is a systemic examination of a road safety project by a trained road safety expert. So what we have is when we typically have a new road project done or a road improvement project done, we will have drawings prepared, and then an independent road safety expert is engaged in order to study those drawings purely from a safety perspective. So they're not interested in mobility, speed, capacity. Those are the priorities of the one who's designed the road. Now the road safety expert who's independently hired looks at those drawings from a perspective of road safety with two objectives. One is to identify safety risks, either location specific or system wide. And the second related objective is to recommend appropriate solutions. So the mantra for the road safety auditor is don't point out problems unless you have a solution for those problems. So every every observation of a safety risk will be accompanied by the necessary solution that you can put in place in order to mitigate that risk. The other important thing is the word appropriate here, because obviously road safety auditors recognize that they have to work within the parameters of efficiency for that road. So the solutions are contextual and appropriate for the necessary situation. Next slide, please. So the benefits of a road safety audit is obviously prevention is better than cure. It's that sometimes could be black spots found in new constructions, and it's better to and cheaper to actually resolve them at the drawing stage rather than try to correct them later on when things are already on place. The second thing is that design standards are there for all roads, and most road designers will follow standards. But we have to keep in mind that design standards are not always adequate for certain specific unique circumstances. Design standards by definition are meant for the generic case and meant to be applicable in most cases. But there are going to be unique situations where you will need to go beyond standards to make something safer when you're dealing with, say, 5-arm intersections or intersections with skewed corners or with major black spots or intersections on top of a hill. So these are the kind of unique situations that you might sometimes have where your standards will not be adequate. The third thing about a road safety audit is that it is based on how road users actually behave rather than how they should behave. And this is extremely important in countries which have poor road user behavior. So it's actually gives a lot of emphasis on creating forgiving infrastructure that accommodates for road users that make mistakes so that it does not lead into a severe crash. And as I said before, it's much cheaper and easier to change a project on paper rather than having to make remedial action later on. Next slide, please. So these are broadly the stages of auditing. It can be done at different stages, from feasibility all the way down up to the opening, and even through monitoring. You do the different stages in order to get the maximum benefit. Next slide, please. A road safety inspection is very similar to a road safety audit. The only difference being that an inspection is done on an existing road rather than doing it on drawings. So typically a road safety inspection will predate a plan for doing a road improvement project, or it might be a response to a fact that there are a lot of crashes happening on a particular road, and hence we need to do a road safety inspection. And why that is important for TOD is typically when you're implementing a TOD plan, you're going to have a lot of corridors that will need to get redesigned and re-implemented. So this is the point when a road safety inspection becomes a lot more crucial, and doing it in the right way is extremely important. Next slide, please. Yeah, so finally, what I leave you with is the IRAP assessment. So road safety audits and inspections are great. They allow you to do something which is systemic and exhaustive. But we also have to keep in mind that they are limiting to the fact that their interventions are manual, right? It relies on a human to go on street, take those measurements, and provide that expertise in determining the safety risk. Now, when we're doing one or two corridors, that can be fine. But if you're talking about a systematic, system-wide intervention across an entire city, which is typically what you'd want for a TOD plan, then you want to think of ways where you can cover a much larger geography in a quicker amount of time. And that leads us to something which is known as the IRAP Road Assessment Program, which relies on the use of technology in order to help you understand the road safety performance of different streets, if you will. So the process of what IRAP does is explained here is broadly, first you start with a road survey. This could be either done physically of a road survey using cameras mounted on top of vehicles, something like those Google Street View cameras, or you can actually even do them on drawings. You can feed drawings into the system. The next thing is that the infrastructure that is there on the street is then codified using sophisticated technology that's able to identify the presence of pedestrian crossings, the presence of signals, on-street parking, footpaths, median gaps, all of that. It automatically recognizes and codifies. It prepares that data, it processes that, and then it churns out a safety risk. It churns out a star rating, which is a roughly rating 1 to 5 based on the risk. Higher the rating, the better it is for that particular street. The good thing about the star ratings is that it breaks it up by road user category. So sometimes a street might be extremely safe for car users, but it might have a very poor safety rating for pedestrians or bicyclists. So it's good that it gives that breakup so that you can know the kind of target intervention that you need to make. The IRAP program is available for all. It's a public domain program. One can tie up with the organization that does that, and I believe the results can then be freely available. I know there's a presentation on a case study for IRAP further down, so I will leave it out here, and I'll hand it over back to Abhishek to take forward the presentation. Thank you, Abhishek.
Right, so thank you, Binay. I'll ask Prerna to join and talk us through enabling road safety for TODs.
Thank you. Thank you, Shige, for facilitating this conversation, and Abhishek and Binoy for setting the context and discussing road safety assessment and its need for TOD. As mentioned, I will discuss about enabling road safety in TOD projects. Next, please. In our previous session, we had discussed about 5-step TOD framework, and enable is one of the important steps as it strives to create an enabling environment for implementing successful TODs. It highlights policy, barriers, and mechanisms that cities can use in enabling TOD planning process. It aims to institutionalize processes and objective of TOD, build local capacity at both institution and civil society level, and pursue policy and financial reforms conducive for successful implementation. Besides this, we also discussed that in our experience so far, TOD project stages include road safety as an embedded element and not as an exclusive asset or outcome of the project. It is always a derivative. Hence, in this section, we will focus on exclusive positioning of road safety in enabled stage. Next, please. The two most common TOD hurdles are an empowered institution, lack of empowered institution that can work across various scales, levels of government and planning sectors towards a TOD solution, and a lack of TOD supportive policy framework, including pedestrian-friendly laws, efficient and inclusive regulations, and market-friendly financial tools. Next, please. To address these challenges and include road safety as an exclusive component, there are four key building blocks to set up and institutionalize an enabling environment, namely leadership and vision, robust institutional structure, effective coordination between government and participating agencies, and inclusive and effective stakeholder engagement. Next, please. Successful TOD relies heavily on political capital of the city or jurisdiction's leadership. Irrespective of the type of leadership structure within a city, a well-informed and committed leader can help position road safety as crucial component of TOD in order to improve the everyday lives and experiences of citizens. For a TOD planner, the very first step to building an enabling environment is to convince the leadership about the benefits of road safety in TOD projects. These benefits can be listed in three categories. Social benefits that offers increased road safety for secure user experience by prioritizing vulnerable groups, that is walking and bicycling. Economic and fiscal benefits offers increased transit ridership due to safe access to transit and helps in reduction of cost on municipal infrastructure by creating value addition through road safety. And lastly, environmental benefits offer safe urban environments by implementing universally accessible complete streets. Further, to enable a supportive environment, one must identify and target larger legal and policy barriers that impede successful implementation. No specific consideration to road safety inclusion in planning and implementation process of TOD projects is one of them. It is often believed that road safety is more a matter of human behavior than a matter of infrastructure. Hence, while the capacity is built for benefits of its inclusion, there is a need to encourage and consider road safety as an important component of TOD in the vision. To ensure that safe road environments are created for safer behavior from all types of users. It will also ensure that the plan at one scale of planning are not hindered by policy barriers at another scale, and the planning process allows effective implementation at any scale. Next, please. In addition to a strong leadership and clear vision, successful and safe TOD needs a robust institutional structure that has representation from all essential sectors and has the required power to influence a transformation. A robust institutional structure ensures that an enabling environment for safe TOD is maintained even through leadership changes. For addressing road safety, the institutional structure will mean including road safety experts or organizations at various scales of planning, defining clear roles and responsibilities of involved stakeholders early in the process, ensuring road safety components are addressed in TOD plans, identifying project champions at individual and organizational levels who will ensure that road safety components are addressed throughout the planning process and across scales of planning. Next, please. Effective coordination between governmental and participating agencies and lack of coordination is another challenge to TOD implementation. Vertical coordination between different levels of government is a key challenge in large countries such as India, Brazil, and China. At the same time, challenges in horizontal coordination between the different sectors of planning and city building is common across all cities. Experiences show that collaboration is a key ingredient for creating an environment that enables the promotion of safe TOD. Identifying partnerships early on between different levels of stakeholders, including the ones that enables road safety, helps to overcome these hurdles. For road safety, infrastructure agencies or public work departments can support planning and transit agencies in formulating short-range and long-range goals, developing mechanisms for achieving these goals, provide technical assistance and expertise to support urban growth and safety, and help develop infrastructure. Similarly, police and security agencies who prepare and maintain road crash data inventory and can help identifying road safety and security concerns within the city and station areas, review design interventions and safety plans. Next, please. Finally, the most important enabling factor is an inclusive and effective stakeholder engagement process. These can involve authorities, professionals working in the field, communities, community representatives, etc. These engagements can be undertaken through interactive activities or workshops. To support the road safety conversation for creating safe TOD, two engagements are suggested, namely road safety workshop and safe access workshop. Next, please. The purpose of road safety workshop is to sensitize participants about road safety challenges faced by the vulnerable road users and to create awareness on both the risk factors as well as the solutions, covering infrastructure, traffic management, and urban planning. These workshops are typically conducted for 4 to 5 hours and include site visits for the participants. The preferred stakeholder strength in these workshops may vary between 40 to 60 people. This workshop is typically limited to public sector or public agency stakeholders, but if need be, it can be extended to select private stakeholders such as NGOs, developers, businesses, improvement groups, and community members, etc. Next, please. Road safety workshop has broadly 7 steps. The first step is to select a busy street or intersection within the TOD area. It is important that this location has a variety of road users and a complex set of road safety challenges. Moving on, randomly divide participants into a group of 6 to 8 individuals and visit the selected area. The participants then make an inventory of all the street elements and make a note of inadequate infrastructure from the perspective of pedestrian and non-motorized transport users that they feel is missing or underprovided. The participants are also asked to observe road user behavior and identify potential conflict points and situations. Post this site visit, the participants return to the workshop venue and discuss their findings. Each group is asked to list down their observations on road safety conflicts and discuss solutions to mitigate these risks. Participants are then encouraged to draw out their solutions on large base drawings, outline of streets intersections in question. Each team then presents their solutions to larger audience. The idea is to note down the commonalities and variations across the groups. Next, please. The other engagement type is Safe Access Workshop. The purpose of this engagement is to inculcate awareness about the importance of safe and equitable access through its principles for all street users and help derive solutions through a collaborative decision-making process. It also strives to derive implementable solutions that are based on safe access principles while negotiating the complexities involved in their adoption. And lastly, it looks to prioritize through community inputs in an interactive format, which promotes a bottom-up approach to help voice people's opinion and hence helps to streamline solutions for the area in consideration. The interaction in this workshop revolves around the 5 principles of safe access, namely pedestrian and cycling priority, enhanced public realm, seamless integration with feeder network routes and infrastructure, parking management, and enhanced safety and security. Next, please. Safe access workshops has, has 5-step process, and it calls for a role play activity. At this point, I won't get into details of this activity as we've already experienced it in our previous workshop that was held on the 1st of October. Next, please. This activity helps to build capacities about safe access and nudges the stakeholders to consider the challenges faced by the vulnerable road users. This slide shows various stakeholders engagements that were conducted both in person and virtually. And at this point, I would like to say that if there is an interest, we can hold a dedicated virtual session on safe access role play activity to acquaint the participants more about this engagement. Please do reach out to us. Next, please. And with this, I will stop and hand over the session back to the chairperson. Shige, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abhishek and Binoy and Prerna. So with the general guidance on TOD and road safety, we are now moving on to the next session to have case studies from our World Bank colleagues. We'll have first by Alina, who is our senior transport specialist based in Singapore. Her case is about Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam, and this will be followed by my other colleague, Fan, who will be presenting on a case in Sao Paulo. So, Alina, please start. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Shige. Can you hear me well? Thank
Very
you.
well.
Thank you. That's perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction, and I'm happy to present you with a case study actually from Ho Chi Minh City and in Vietnam on a TOD corridor, on a BRT corridor actually that is being financed by the World Bank. And I feel that this case study might actually respond to some of the questions that I've seen in the Q&A box. So if I could just very briefly summarize from the previous presentations that was just delivered. Basically, what we have to remember is the fact that assess is the first stage of the TOD resources and implementation toolkit. And along with advocated for a TOD project to address road safety challenges around the transit station and the city at large, the assess stage also helps in identifying gaps at the institutional levels, critical areas in the network that require attention, and can thus be prioritized and provide mitigation strategies and designs. And as it was presented a bit earlier, the main 3 categories of activities to carry out a road safety assessment while assessing TOD readiness are road safety management capacity reviews, data collection and analysis, and road safety engineering tools. And I'll be actually presenting some of those in just a few seconds. For the second step in the TOD implementation and resources tool is enable. And this lays down proactive tasks that cities and states will need to take towards creating successful TOD planning processes. This stage focuses on strategies to institutionalize the process and objectives of TOD, build local capacity, both institutional and in civil society, and pursue policy and financial reforms conducive for successful TOD implementation. So what I can tell you is that for this specific case study for Ho Chi Minh City, basically the activities that I'm going to showcase have actually helped inform the upgrade of the TOD guidelines, but these were delivered in the past over 5 years. So since 2015, we've been working, and even a bit earlier than this. So the TOD guidelines was just recently updated, and they were shared with all the participants, basically integrated the safety considerations thanks to a grant from UKAID. So we were just discussing a bit earlier about a TOD and corridor, and this is mainly my case study is regarding a bus rapid transit line and the relevant infrastructure along the corridor of the project that will introduce to Ho Chi Minh City a faster, safer, and more comfortable BRT line in the city, but also contribute to the urban renewal, environmental protection, and enhancement of quality of life of the city residents. This World Bank project also helps to complete the institutional framework and the model of management and operation of the public transport system of the city, provides training to strengthen the capacity of stakeholders, and conducts studies as a foundation for developing other BRT lines, contributing to the development of an intelligent, integrated public transport system for Ho Chi Minh City in the future. This BRT line is basically is actually one line, and it's along Vo Van Kit and Mai Chi To corridor, and it has a total length of 23 kilometers, and the supporting infrastructure of 28 stations, 17 footbridges, out of which 11 are will be newly constructed, and 6 are existing and will be improved, and also 1 terminal and 1 technical facility. The corridor caters for between 60,000 and 200,000 vehicles per day, and the large proportion of vehicles of these vehicles are basically motorcycles. So when we look into the assess and enable of road safety along this corridor, we took a look at the main BRT route or the main corridor, but we also try to understand a bit the context. So we've done some assessments, some safety assessments also, and looked into the feeder roads and access corridors along the main BRT route. We've also looked at the school zones, which are across the BRT, because of course the new BRT, the new proposed corridor, will be impacting the traffic around the schools. We've also looked into the footbridges, the existing ones, and how they will be affected, and also the new ones. And our focus was also around capacity building, and this was a very important part of the enable step for TOD. So if we start to step by step, as I was mentioning, the processes that we can use under assess, the first one would be the road safety management capacity review. And here I can tell you that, as I mentioned, since 2015 and even earlier, the World Bank Global Road Safety Facility, we've been engaged in Vietnam and especially in Ho Chi Minh City, especially under the Bloomberg Philanthropies Initiative for Global Road Safety. Which helped us look into the road safety management capacity of the country of Vietnam, and get a better understanding of the traffic conditions and especially the safety conditions in the country, and more specifically in Ho Chi Minh City. So we've been working with other international partners, including the WRI, to assess the safety of Ho Chi Minh City since 2015, and this has definitely helped us. Also very much in informing safety for the Ho Chi Minh City BRT project. In terms of road crash data, this was not very easy to get in Vietnam and in Ho Chi Minh City. We did have a tentative of piloting a crash database, which would help also share more of the crash data information with citizens. But we were able to get some information on this. So according to the baseline IRAP report since 2016, the number of road deaths on the corridor have been rapidly increasing, and by 2014, basically 30 people were reported killed in crashes, and this was around 1.3 deaths per kilometer per year, which was very high by world standards. So notably, road death across the whole of Ho Chi Minh City reportedly declined slightly during the same period. But with the safety estimates that were done, thanks to the IRAP methodology, the economic cost of road death and serious injury on the corridor was an average of around 9.8 million per year between 2012 and 2014. So these were mainly based on estimations, but they were very useful in identifying the risky locations, and especially the road user participants that were most at risk. So for the road safety engineering tools, as I was mentioning a bit earlier, we did have a series of assessments that were performed starting 2014, 2015. We've been working very closely with the International Road Assessment Program, with IRAP, And for example, we've had 180 kilometers for baseline assessments, but also looking into interim designs and draft designs. And the latest report was assessed by IRAP in 2018, December 2018, on the draft detailed designs. So we've also looked not only on the existing situation, but also we very closely assessed the situation that was proposed. We've also done surveys around 37 schools, which were across the BRT corridor, and also 9 pedestrian footbridges that were surveyed and assessed. All these assessments, they've helped us understand better what is the current situation. So these reports are made public, and they are able, you can download them and access them from the IRAP website. But when looking at the entire data that was presented, we realized that, for example, 40% of point locations surveyed had no sidewalk. And also 35%, there were no pedestrian crossing facilities. And also there were many issues. For example, there were no facilities for bicyclists. So this type of assessments, they helped us understand better which are the main, the risk group, and what are the main measures that we need to focus on to improve safety of all road users. Also, as current plans for the BRT service do not have it directly accessing key transport hubs and also future MRT stations, and basically the downtown area, it was estimated that pedestrian journeys would average around 500 meters to 2 kilometers. And as such, a network of 36 roads were selected for survey in the vicinity of the BRT corridor. And basically this network included roads that directly intersect with the BRT corridor and or connect to a BRT station, which are called as feeder roads, but also roads that serve as connecting roads and major points of destination or origin destination for passenger, which are called access corridors. Basically, the star rating assessment of the feeder roads and access corridors found pedestrian risk of fatalities and serious injuries was the highest, 63% of the roads where pedestrians are present, and rated just 1 or 2 stars. And motorcyclists were at the next highest, for whom 34% of the roads were below 3 stars. During the star rating surveys and inspections, also 6 pedestrian bridges and 3 overpasses with pedestrian access were observed on the existing corridor. And the existing pedestrian bridges were identified as low quality design and have poor accessibility and connectivity, which limits their usability. So some key results of the star rating, for example, for the pedestrian footbridges, basically with one exception, all the existing pedestrian bridges were coded as being of poor quality, with only one exception. And basically the design bridges were also coded, were coded basically as being of adequate quality. At the same time, none of the existing bridges were complemented by pedestrian fencing. And except for 3 locations, all the design bridges were complemented by pedestrian bridges. And as I was mentioning, because we've been doing this type of assessment at different stages of the design, based on the detailed design report and the drawings, the star ratings for the corridor are already shown basically here in the photo on your screen. And overall, the ratings for the detailed designs are actually slightly worse than those of the interim designs. And this is mainly because of proposed changes in speed limits that have a negative effect on risk, and also by many of the details in the designs which affect the star ratings, such as raised pedestrian crossings that were included in the interim designs, but then they were dropped in the final designs. This star rating results that you can see is based on basically the blue one was done in 2015, the interim design in 2016, and the green one in 2018. And more recently, and actually the most recent report that was produced for this BRT corridor, it's a road safety audit for the final designs performed by the World Resources Institute, by WRI, also under the Bloomberg initiative. And basically, since 2015, WRI has also been working on the development, to support the development of the Ho Chi Minh's BRT system. And since 2019, the BRT designs have gone under major revisions due to the addition of 2 branch services that connect to central areas of the city. And in August 2020, this road safety audit was prepared based on the final designs that were shared with the team in August 2020. So this is the most recent, and it's definitely improved from the version that was reviewed by IRAP in 2018. And of course, a new iteration will be performed, we are estimating, in the next few months to see how these final designs have improved the star rating. I think I have just a few minutes left from my presentation, so I will try to wrap this up. I would just want to tell you a bit about the school zones that were also assessed, and we had 37 school zones. And for this, we've been piloting the IRAP star rating for schools app, and it was really good to see, even though these schools were along the BRT corridor, 4 of them were already upgraded in the past 2 years, and they've reached 3-star or better. And this work was done in partnership with the Asian Injury Prevention Foundation, which is now continuing the work for improving school zone safety. All these activities basically were done, and this I'm going into the enable step, were done with strong capacity building, and over 300 people were trained on road safety engineering. We've had a very strong partnership with the Asian Injury Prevention Foundation, but also with the University of Transport and Communication in Ho Chi Minh City. And they were IRAP accredited and also trained how to use the IRAP tools. And another way that the enable step was made was by working together with WRI and with AIP Foundation to create, actually based on the experience from the 37 school zones, to create a safe school zone manual that would be applied from these 37 schools to all the schools in Ho Chi Minh, and then further on to the entire country. And the last thing that I could share with you regarding the enable step is how we've, from this entire project, basically just supporting the BRT financed project by the World Bank, we were able to work, as I mentioned, with local institutions and adapt the IRAP tool, actually to translate it into the local language. So basically the entire VIDA tool is actually now available, and all the IRAP technical specifications are currently available in the local language, and they can be easily shared with across the country and being used. Thank you so much, and I'll be handing over the screen to my colleague Juan Miguel, and I'll ask him to share the screen from his side. Thank you.
Juan, you're on mute.
Yeah, please unmute, Juan.
Oh, hi, good morning, good afternoon, everyone, good evening, depending on where you are. I'm in Washington. Abby, could you please enable the screen sharing for me?
Can you try now?
That works, thank you. So I will, with Alina's introduction, I will now share the case study of Sao Paulo in Brazil. This is also a BRT project that has been recently approved for financing by the World Bank. It's a 14-kilometer BRT corridor in the east side of the city, which is a lower income part of Sao Paulo, and it's a BRT that will play a very important role in the mobility of the region because it's connecting two important transit terminals, one where the state suburban rail system connects at the north, with another terminal at the south where there will be a monorail station, this new BRT station, and it's a big bus terminal for also interstate and interstate commuter and coach buses as well. So it will provide a very important link for intermodal integration, which we, as a TOD corridor, we also want to make sure that that this connection is important in upgrading the urban environment around it. So we're going to do footpath improvements and basically requalify all the footpaths around the 14 kilometers of the corridor. There will be a new bicycle lane in order to meet the targets set by the city in their bicycle safety plan. And it will connect many bits and pieces of existing bicycle lanes that are not connected. And it will also be meeting all the universal accessibility principles, not only for the stations and the buses, but also in the surrounding environment of the interventions of the project in the intermodal stations and also in the sidewalks and pedestrian crossings as well. And lastly, we'll make a strong effort in the improved street lighting to make sure that it's safer, that it's very visible, and that should have also road safety impacts as well. So going back to the 3 stages of the assess methodology, where we would start with a road safety management capacity under the Bloomberg Initiative for Global Road Safety. We've been working with the city of Sao Paulo already for 3 years, and we helped them produce a new road safety plan that was recently adopted by the city as a decree. And the city has been having a very good achievement. And if you see, they almost achieved the 50% reduction of the road safety, in the last decade, which matched the road safety decade of action goal that was set globally, and that very few cities and countries actually met. And what we help the city do with this 10-year road safety plan is also set a goal of again reducing by 50% the fatal victims in traffic crashes by 2030. But we also try to see who is responsible of doing what, who has responsibility over pedestrian safety issues, over bicycle safety issues, where is the budget to carry out all those actions that will take the city to this 50% reduction. And then we try to assess who, if they have the capacity to do it, what they would need to do it. And that would translate very well into the TOD corridor, because then we know who is responsible for what and who should be involved in what part of the project to make sure that the project is very well aligned with this 50% reduction target. And so we started with the road crash data analysis. Part of the work that we did with the city when we did the 10-year strategy was set up a system for road crash data information to the public. They had very good data collection through the police, through the hospital and health system, but it was not accessible to the public. The general public, researchers, they would have to submit a special request to access this data in detail. And so what we did is set up a tool based on Driver, which is a World Bank tool for road crash data analysis, and put it out for the public. And we actually use that tool to run the crash data analysis for the corridor, and we identified the critical road sections of, especially for pedestrians and motorcyclists, which we found were the most critical aspects there. But we also try to look at the times in which these crashes are happening, which led us to make sure that we include this street lighting part as something important. And we also took data from Uber to try to understand in each one of these road segments, what are the speed profiles throughout the day. And we found that speeding is an important issue, that there are significant high speeds, and that is an important risk for pedestrians and for cyclists, but also for motorcyclists. So in order to assess the corridor and try to understand We started with a baseline assessment using the IRAP tool on the corridor, which we then later on also applied the star rating for designs once we had the basic designs of the corridor. And what we found was rather interesting. 67% of the road was classified as 1 or 2 star for pedestrians, and you want a minimum of 3 stars or higher for your TOD corridor. So we find that there's a very important work that we need to do here to improve pedestrian safety. But then we also looked at motorcycle safety, which is a growing issue in the city. And we also found that only 37% of the corridor was also 1 or 2 stars for motorcyclists. So we needed to also focus on improving safety for motorcyclists in the corridor. We then moved on to do a road safety audit, and under the Bloomberg initiative, we've been partnering with WRI Brazil in doing this road safety audit, and this is almost complete, but still now at a draft stage. And based on the critical sections that we identified using the road crash data, but also it was mentioned in one of the questions about the existing road crash data reflects patterns and the use of the road today. And with a TOD corridor and with the significant investment that will happen here, we're going to significantly transform this corridor. So what we also try to look is at the critical areas, and especially there is a shopping center, which hopefully will be very well integrated with the BRT, and is part of what we're planning to do. And is probably the biggest shopping center in South America. So we know that there's going to be increasing pedestrian flows in that area, and we're trying to anticipate that by also focusing on that specific area. And of course, the road safety audit looks at the designs in detail and tries to anticipate any issues that will happen in the future and try to correct them and propose solutions so that they can be very cheaply incorporated into the design before things are built. So just showing a couple of examples here of what the road safety audit has found. It found pedestrian access issues to the stations where pedestrians are not visibly seeing the other BRT corridors, the other BRT vehicles, for example, and there's a proposition here, a recommendation to extend the sidewalk there to increase the visibility at the stops when pedestrians are crossing. We're also looking at the adjoining and the feeder roads that get into that end in the Aricanduva Avenue corridor, and looking at the speeds in which vehicles are allowed to turn, for example. And here we have a very wide lane with a very large turning lane, a very large radius for the turning lane. And we're proposing here to reduce that in order to manage speeds and reduce speeds of turning vehicles, so that if there are crashes with pedestrians, they're not as fatal, but also to reduce the number of crashes where pedestrians can be involved, as well as improving signing and lighting, signature lighting, so that pedestrians know where to cross and that rules are clear and self-understandable for the different road users. Lastly, going into the enable part, I wanted to pick back on the initial work that we did for the supporting the city on the road safety strategy for the next 10 years, where there was a lot of stakeholder engagement. The driver tool that we developed was specifically done for this stakeholder engagement, and they went through all the different sub districts of the city, which is it's a city of a 20 plus million people. So they went to each one of the sub districts. They used the data in Driver to discuss the goals and the needs of each sub district in terms of road safety. And specifically, they went to Aricanduva, which is the one around the BRT corridor. And that was included also in a stakeholder engagement plan that is part of the project document. There's also a grievance redress mechanism where the community can make complaints and can get responses to any complaints that they have, or any questions or any concerns that they have about the project as well. We still need to continue. We've been also doing input to the project from the community of users and inhabitants, Specifically, there's a bicycle plan for the city where they went to this specific sub-district and also got feedback from people who use bicycles or people who would like to use bicycles, and they're not able to use it because there's missing connections, because there's high speeds in the road, and there's not enough protection for bicyclists to use it. And we got that feedback as well. And we are hopefully using that in the future to continue that feedback. And as the designs get a bit more detail and advanced through the different stages of design, we want to get more feedback from the community. At this point, I think it's also important to take into account the role of, you know, how we do these community engagements given the current situation of limitation of crowds and limitation of community gatherings. So we need to get a bit creative into how we use different communication channels to reach the population and get their feedback. And lastly, we're also engaging different authorities to disseminate the results from the assessments, to disseminate the engineering tools, doing capacity building with them on how they could do, for example, the IRAP star rating for design for the different design stages of the project, to ensure that the recommendations were taken into account and that they're actually producing the expected results. So without further ado, I want to thank you for your attention and your time, and Shige, over to you.
Thank you, Juan and Alina, for the excellent presentations. So we have already received a few questions on the chat section as well as the Q&A sections. Our team has been trying to respond some of these. We have about 10 minutes plus for Q&A. So if you have any questions, if you can raise your hand so that I guess Abhishek can find and select, and we'll ask for the specific questions. So if you have any questions, please raise hand using this raise hand function. Okay, so while we wait, I prepared one question. This is for the WRI team. So the presentation covered the basic framework, recommended activities for road safety and TOD. And I was wondering, I mean, in addition to generic and general activities that we have to do for road safety, what are the specific or unique activities that we would recommend in the TOD setup? Like considering that this is in urban, we have transit stations, perhaps we may have a mixed use development. Are there any specific activities that we recommend to do for the planners and implementation bodies in the TOD setup? Either Abhishek or Binoy or Parona, can you answer to my question? Hello. Maybe this is.
Sorry, I missed the question.
Okay.
Was it to me?
I mean, to any one of you. Specific
I lost the signal in
activities.
between. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Shigi, let me take this up, and maybe Abhishek and Binoy can chip in. So basically, when we look at a TOD area, it's like an ecosystem. It is not just about looking at roads or streets in isolation. So when you are looking at TOD area, and when you are trying to assess how ready this particular area is, then you have to also look around and understand the kind of uses that are there, the entire urban framework, entire urban fabric around, and what are the important footfall points in that particular area. So usually, the footfalls are driven by activity centers. So it is a good idea to map those activity centers in the area that you have taken up, and understand that what kind of traffic is generated from those particular activity generators in a particular in a study area that you have selected. So I think that that value addition is required, which we may not completely look at when we are looking at streets in specific. Another important aspect is, since TOD has transit as its central point, it is around the transit, it is important to address very, very carefully the ingress and egress points of these transit facilities, because that's where, and it will have peak hours, it will have lean hours. So it has to be looked at in a scenario where you have looked at all the situations, peak and non-peak, and then understand the distribution of the footfall that is that is operating in that zone. So I think this is something that is very critical when it comes to understanding the readiness of the area. And maybe Binoy and Abhishek would want to chip in and add more to this.
Thanks, Prerna. I'll add a little bit on the enable part also, because especially when we're looking at community engagement and stakeholder engagement, especially with when we're promoting TOD, one would look at the benefits one gets from TOD in terms of like real estate or access to transit stations, etc. But road safety can be used as an important tool, because that talks about with crashes and all, that is loss of lives, which also impacts the economy, and that sort of becomes a good rallying point for stakeholders, especially community members, to demand for safe neighborhoods, demand for safe urban environments. And TOD, if definitely around a transit station, a TOD development can further help in achieving road safety for that neighborhood. So when one does engagement practices and capacity building for institutions, road safety can act as an important tool to encourage and advocate for TOD.
Okay, thanks for the answers. Any questions from our participants? If also there is one hand. Mukta, can you unmute, or do we have to unmute you?
I've asked you to
hello?
unmute.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Lovely presentation and very informative, especially the case studies. There's one question that I want to ask, which is around the topic of coordination. How do you, apart from the workshops that are conducted, how do you really increase coordination between the different stakeholders, not just to increase road safety, but also to have a very well-developed TOD? So could someone please highlight that? Because I think coordination is something that is very important for urban planners as well as other policymakers. Are there any sort of IT tools or those sort of things that can help us increase coordination? Can we use data to actually increase coordination? So if someone can speak a bit about this, it will be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very good question. If I may, I would like to address this question to my Workman colleagues. If Alina or Juan, I guess Juan has done quite a lot of data collection analysis. So if there is any tools that were used and turned out to be effective, please share. Juan first, please.
to think. I agree that it's a great question, and I hope that the experience of São Paulo can lend some ideas to that, but I think we're still trying to figure it out ourselves. I mentioned, for example, there's a shopping center, right? So engaging with the private sector requires a very different type of tools and timings and business case that needs to be done with them than you would with certain members of the community or with or with different authorities. I think one thing that I wanted to highlight from the road safety perspective in a TOD is this tool that we developed for community engagement to share the road crash data with people in the whole city. And that tool ended up also being used by the government authorities, because the government authorities that are not working necessarily day to day on transport, say the urban development people or the the other departments that don't necessarily deal with police data or hospital data, they also wanted access to this data, easy access to this data. And even though they can call their colleagues and it'll take a couple of days for the colleagues to send the data, there was no issue with that. There's nothing like just clicking and being able to look at the data, and then the time that they spend with the authorities is actually an informed discussion, and they want to know about road traffic injuries as well, because they're concerned with that, even though they don't deal with the creation of the data. So I think that as an IT tool is it's a good example of how you can use one tool to engage community, but also to improve this coordination with authorities. But just to close, I want to emphasize that it is an importantly a difficult issue that we're still trying to figure out in the project, how we can improve that coordination so that that we can all go into that a common goal of improving road safety around the TOD corridor, and road safety being one of the many aspects that you have to deal when you're doing a TOD corridor.
Thanks, Juan. Alina, do you want to share your experience in Ho Chi Minh or any other places?
Thank you, Shige. For Ho Chi Minh City, I think we've mainly worked with the transport department. So it was, and I think the good advantage was the fact that we had this Bloomberg initiative where we were able to work with different partners that were working on other sides of road safety. So also on communication side, on media, so it was a bit easier to raise awareness around the topic and on the safety of urban transport in general. I think Juan explained very well, and I fully agree that coordination is not something easy. I mean, for TOD and also for road safety. And I would like to emphasize the fact that road safety is not something that can be done only by one person or by one institution. And it's something that it can be improved just through partnerships. And since Juan explained very well the part that, TOD corridors and mainly the last mile connectivity, I would just like to add on the regional part. On a higher scale, if I could add my experience on this, on regional road safety observatories, which are also very useful as tools to share the information around road safety data, which is accessibility, safety, security, and all this, and crash data. So there are various tools, and I think the more we highlight the need for safe corridors, for safety on the roads, the better. And people from different domains should also be made more aware about safety and its importance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Arina. So as we are reaching the time, I'd like to close. Thanks so much for the participants to join this session. I'd like to also thank the presentations by our speakers, excellent speakers from WRI and the World Bank. I hope these presentations are useful for the participants of today's session. As I explained at the beginning, this is the second session of the 4-session series. And we have another session, as shown on the slide, next week, planning and designing road safety measures in TOD. So this will give a bit more details about what you should do when you plan and design TOD. And we have the final session 2 weeks from now on financing and implementation. I'm sure this will be very useful for our practitioners, academics, and whoever is involved in transit-oriented development. So with that, I'd like to close. I will thank again for USAID for the support to make this series happen. And I hope you have a good day. And I hope to see all the participants again next week. And thanks for joining the session. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Shige, for moderating our session today. I would also like from WRI thank all the speakers and everyone for their support. Thank you so much.
Thank you.